hi everyone. I am back. I think it was last week I said that I would be doing more of these kind of impromptu lives, and actually I was looking in my phone, I have my to-do list, and I had written down that I would do these every Wednesday. So I'm like, all right, it's Wednesday. I am going to do this. Plus I've been on fire today. I recorded 4 videos for my YouTube channel. So I'm like, all right, let's just keep this momentum going, right? So if you're watching me for the first time, my name is Mireille Nicole, and I work with women on their relationship, their love life. So I wanted to share a few things in these impromptu lives, things that I have just either on my mind, on my heart, things I see, just some beliefs. And today I thought it would be really fun to talk about my love journey and share with you guys kind of where I came from, how I got to the place where I am in my love life, and also from the perspective of what got me into relationship coaching, because every now and then I get some messages in the DMs, what led you to do this work? I had one recently. I'm like, I should just go live and share this story. Obviously, I share it every now and then in my different posts, but I was like, hey, that's going to be our first official topic for these videos I'm doing. Just these quick little videos that I'm hopping on and sharing with you guys. So let's just get started. So I actually shared this story on a podcast I was on not that long ago, and just starting from the beginning, when I was a little girl, I wasn't the girl that dreamt of her wedding day, but I did have a very clear idea of what I pictured for my love life. Like I had a really good dream. I had a very solid dream of what I was looking for in terms of how I felt in love and what the feelings that would come up in me with this dream man of mine. So I was really focused on that aspect, not so much, my wedding day and what I would wear and what it would look like and all the guests. Like I was really focused on the connection part with this other human being, this other man that was going to come into my life that I was going to meet someday in this magical way for this fairy tale. And so that is something I carried with me all the years that I was growing up. And just growing up, going through the dating years, I have to say I'm one of those girls that I never had that super long-term relationship with anyone. Like I would meet people, I would go on dates, and it never really lasted for a long time. Like I can't say that it's like I was born and I knew what to do with relationships, and so I became a relationship coach because it was all already in me, and I was destined for this, from the day I was born. I still think I was destined for this, but in another way, in a more surprising way than what I would have expected growing up anyway. So those were my dating years, just short relationships here and there. Things wouldn't work out. I was like, what the heck is going on? I didn't know what I was doing, and it just wasn't working out for me. But in my early 20s, I finally did meet someone who would end up being my first husband. So I did meet this great guy. We got married. It was during the years, the early 20s, or maybe by then that's when I met him. But then by the late 20s, that's when all my friends were getting married. That's when, normally you would get married and then have your first child, and then on it goes. And so I was in that pattern. I fell into that pattern, married this great man, and then it just didn't work out a few years later. It became very clear to me that this wasn't exactly the best relationship for the both of us. And I actually made the decision to leave that relationship. So I'm the one who initiated the divorce and the end of the relationship in the sense of everything that happened right during that, without going into all those personal details. But I would say I was definitely the cause of that divorce. So when I talk about relationships, a lot of times it comes from an empowered place, right? Because it's not like I was in a situation where I was necessarily left. There was, intention on my part also. So a lot of my posts you'll see from a position in a way of strength, so to speak, and empowerment from that perspective. So that's one of the key takeaways I wanted you to remember from this. And when you go on my feed, and maybe that changes the lens through which you read my posts now. So another thing, by the way, I just want to say this, give it a shout out. I had a great first husband, and now I have a great ex-husband. That's what I always say, a great co-parent too. So I actually went on to then marry the next man I started dating. So something very unconventional, right? Like a lot of times you'll see people out there who say, the first relationship after divorce is never going to work out. Well, I just like blew that myth out of the water. Like, the next person I was with is the person I ended up marrying quite a few years later, because there's a whole story with this man that I share in my post, right? About for a while, didn't seem like we were going to get married at all. But then we finally did. I'm super happy to say that, because it ended up being the perfect connection for me, that connection I desired growing up. So it happened for me later in life. So that's another thing when I work with women. Women are drawn to me usually a little bit later in life, because that is what I experienced. My happily ever after didn't happen, in my early 20s, kind of like that standard point in time where, you get married, have your kids in your 20s or whatnot. For me, it happened later in life. I met him in my mid-30s, got married the second time in my 40s. So a bit unconventional from that perspective. And like I said, unconventional from the perspective that it was the first man I dated after divorce. So I come from love and relationships, also from a place where anything is possible. I don't believe in set rules, in standards, in whatever kind of, preconceived notions we might have. I really do believe everything is possible, and to not get so fixated on these rules that we have either as a society, or that you see in movies, or when you talk to your friends, or you look at what everyone else is doing, right? So just to give you some more history too on my second marriage, so my current marriage and my last marriage, is that after a while, even though this relationship was definitely the connection I was looking for, we started with this beautiful whirlwind romance, and it was going, it was a fairy tale from the beginning. As time went on, some of these patterns, so to speak, or some of the things I had noticed kind of in my dating life was starting to happen, right? Like in my relationship, in the sense that, those skills I never had growing up or hadn't learned along the way were really starting to catch up with me. So even if this was this perfect person for me, things started getting rocky at one point. Things started going sideways. And that's when we weren't married, we were dating. It was kind of getting really concerning for me, because I didn't see where this was going to go anymore. And any talk that had ever happened of marriage was like, no, it's not happening. It's not, it wasn't what he desired. And so, that's kind of where it was going. And that's the point at which I made the decision, okay, what do I do now? Because a lot of women also come to me in a position of, should I stay or should I go? And I totally get that. I track these women and I draw them in, because I found myself in both situations. Like I did both of the, those answers, or I took that decision, both of those decisions, you know what I'm saying, right? So in one circumstance with my first marriage, I decided to go. And in the second relationship, in my current marriage, I decided to stay. So we had let things kind of, I always say, from the lack of skills, from my lack of understanding of even men in general. I love talking about the topic of, understanding the man better. So that was really starting to take a toll on the relationship. Now, obviously, we were still okay and we were still getting by. Things would have been good. I don't know what would have happened, but that's when I decided to make the decision, in this case, that I was going to stay. So that's when I really started getting my own support. I really believe if you want to get to where you want to go in your love life faster, the best way to do it is to get support. Also, yes, keep reading the books on your own, keep watching the videos on your own, but to have someone there to guide you and to coach you through it made such a difference for me, and which is what called me to want to make that difference for other women's lives too, and help them get there faster. Because as soon as I started doing those skills, I'd say after a few months, right, I really believe in giving yourself like a good amount of runway to work on these things, because most of the time we let them build up, and then we get to a point where we feel like, oh my gosh, we have to make this decision and things have to happen fast. But what led to this has been happening, in many cases for years. In my case, it had been happening for years. So one of the big, another key takeaway I really want you to take from this is to give yourself, some flexibility, some grace. Ideally, if you can start working on things before it gets too bad. Don't let it get to your breaking point. Although I admit for myself, I did let it get to the breaking point. That's what I needed to, to light a fire under my butt and do something about it, because I didn't want to lose this, and I didn't want to be divorced a second time, put my family through, my son and the other kids, because we blended families and everything. I didn't want to put everyone through that again. And like I said, I knew this was my person. So really, that was my why for doing all of this. And this is what kept me going. And a lot of times when women will ask me and they'll say, well, Mireille, like, did you guys go to therapy? Did you guys do couples therapy? And I was like, no. That was like a hard no from my man's part, and which is fine, which I totally accept, because what you need to know is, like, it was said that in 80% of cases, it's usually the woman that brings up the problems and the issues. Like, to do the work and the personal development stuff is very, very often, I don't want to say a feminine energy thing, because feminine energy is just kind of like, can be seen as overused or whatnot, or a super broad, vague term. But a lot of the times it's women that bring these things up. So don't put too much emphasis on that. I encourage you not to add too much meaning about that or create stories around it. Really, I focused on myself and how I showed up in the relationship and learned about relationships. And as I did the work, the mirror neurons in the brain started working at his end too. And we started, creating this wonderful new dynamic, because when I changed my interactions, he had no choice but to change his interaction. And yes, at first, sometimes he's thrown off and I didn't get the reaction I wanted right away. But the more I implemented these skills and got better at them and understood them better and got that feedback, the better I could adjust. And then that's when I started seeing those amazing results. So that's when, after a few months of doing that, I always say it's after, I'd have to look back in my notes how much time I did the work, like probably close to a year, to give you guys a good, honest, answer to that, close to a year. And then when it started clicking within then he proposed to me, and within 6 months we were married. Like, the person who was like, no, we're not getting married, we're just going to stay like this, or who knows, right, what was going to happen, like, switched. So obviously, I'm like, my circumstance is going to be unique to me. Your circumstances are going to be unique to you, but I want to show you the evidence of what's possible out there. And it might look different for you. It might look different for everyone, but there's going to be, everyone has their own unique happily ever after. It's going to happen in its own way. And really, I strongly believe the key to that is to work on the skills, work on your mindset, work on your understanding of the other person, of relational skills. And that's what it's going to get you to, right? And you know what, like, sometimes, especially for us who are divorced, it's going to be, there's that whole aspect of, first of all, mourning maybe the fairy tale or the idea that you would have in your love life. That's not going to happen that way, that it's going to look different, right? I always say, my love life, looks really different than a lot of people's love life, and that's okay. It doesn't have to look like everyone else's. It doesn't have to look like a Disney movie or some sort of rom-com or Hallmark channel romantic movie, right? It's going to look the way it looks, and it's going to be beautiful and unique to everyone, and you're going to grow and you're going to learn through the process of that. So I don't mean to, to like sugarcoat it with all this rosy picture. Like I said, like, we had pretty intense challenges ourselves in our relationship. Like I just shared recently, I had become like the crazy, needy girlfriend at some point in the relationship before I started doing the work. And that's where I had to get to before it really prompted me to do the work. And he had started, by that point, distancing himself, being less supportive, showing more of these. Like, if you looked at me back then and you looked at him, you would have been like, okay, those are two toxic people. What are they doing? That's a toxic relationship. And I'm not taking that away, that there are many toxic relationships out there, and especially situations where there's any kind of physical harm, you feel threatened, you feel unsafe for your life, like you get out of there. But a lot of times there are these toxic dynamics that just happen from, honestly, just a lack of skills and understanding, and just maybe not having certain types of role models growing up. There are a lot of, other people who come from divorced families and maybe haven't been modeled certain skills. So there's a whole, spectrum of different circumstances and situations that people have been exposed to. But one common denominator to all this is definitely going to be the skills and the tools that you use. So we still have a lot of challenges in our relationships, right? We were both in long-term relationships before. I was married. My husband was with someone for a long time. He brought 2 girls to the relationship. I brought my son. So we have all these co-parenting, high conflict divorce, blended family challenges that we still deal with, that still, present obstacles to us, but we have these tools now and we have this understanding, and by working on it, we really were able to strengthen our bond and we actually feel closer than ever. So I really wanted to share that with you guys today. I'm just gonna look here to see if I missed anything. One of the things, So one of the things I wanted you to keep in mind too with my story and where I come from with the posts and the content I share with you is, so a lot of, you might see instances too where there are people who are in this field, who have done the inner work and attracted from a place where there was already healing, there was already some sort of personal development. And so when I attracted my current husband after divorce, at that point, I had done no personal development. I didn't know what all this inner work stuff was. So I just want to say that to you from a place of hope, because if you're like me and, you attracted your dream man before you had done any of this healing stuff or knew about all this, this inner work or this personal growth area, that doesn't mean that, you necessarily attracted someone that was horrible for you, right? Because you were attracting from the level that you were at. Like, that's a big thing. And I know it was said to me too, Mira, you attract from the level where you're at. Well, I'm like, I attracted my man from a really low level. But we managed to grow out of it. So again, there is always potential. There is always hope for certain situations. So be careful with your labels or what you take as cues to just give up. Really, it's about listening to your intuition and getting clarity on your desires more than, standards or what other people think. You really want to work on your inner compass and really get clear on that and really learn to trust in yourself again and to be able to trust in yourself again and get that clarity and weave out all the different stories you have, maybe the past traumas and the healing there that has to be done around that, so that you can really shed light on these decisions that you need to make in your love life. So doesn't have to look like everyone else's. It'll happen at whatever point it's meant to happen. And so I just wanted to share that with you guys today. I hope it was interesting to hear my story. Like I said, I share bits and pieces here and there in different posts, but I thought it'd be nice to have just one video that captures my love journey, how I got here, what inspired me to do this work. And I really think that it's going through all those experiences that have helped shape me as a better relationship coach. I'm just waiting to put my frame certificate up there. It's getting framed right now for my relationship coaching certification. But having taken that course, and sure, it gives some wonderful additional tools to what I already had in my tool belt from working with women over these few years and just my personal experience. But there's nothing that compares to actually being able to remember what it's like to be in people's shoes, right? In the woman's shoes or in your situation, right? Based on what happened with, the first marriage, divorce, and just learning the skills and all those different experiences that really shape the perspective from which I do my work and I can support and guide other women out there. So I hope this was interesting. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments or feel free to DM me. I realize this is a touchy subject, so I am super responsive in the DMs. I love hearing from you guys. I love to hear, see how, if and how I can help you and what insights I can share with you guys. So make sure to never hesitate to reach out when you feel comfortable, when you feel ready. I am there for you. So I hope you have a great Wednesday, midweek hump day, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.